Have you ever had somebody give you a second chance? I want you to stop and think, what did that mean to you? Did it change the outcome of that relationship just because you had a second chance? We know the other day, my husband and I were headed somewhere, and I was a little bit low on energy. We had had some medical issues going on. We'd been very busy, and we tried to keep doing everything we were supposed to be doing during those medical issues. And I probably was, like I said, a little low on energy. And he did some little something that frustrated me. And you know what? 3 weeks later, I didn't even remember what it was. So, just how important was that? It probably wasn't very important at all. He didn't hold that against me, thank goodness. But I've given many people second chances because basically I forget what it is that they did in the first place that irritated me. But today I want to share with you two movies that I watched this past weekend that really made me stop and think about relationships. And they really made you understand how people really start out with a hard life. Like things go wrong. Maybe in childhood they were frustrated. They had their parents split up, or there's so many different things. But I found in these two movies an explanation that really will help you today to think about your own relationship and think about what really matters and what doesn't really matter. And at the end, I'm going to give you five concepts that made a difference for these characters in their lives. Well, the first movie focuses on a young man who had a really tough start in life. His parents were poor, they lived in the mountains, they didn't have much. The father left, the mother had tons of I would say actually mental problems, maybe from trauma that she actually experienced in her childhood. She poured that upon her own kids, and there was a lot of frustration, a lot of fighting, a lot of bickering, a lot of anger that went on. And when you're growing up with that as a child, according to your personality style, you either get so mad and angry at the world, or you totally withdraw and you don't have any friends and you don't talk about it. But this young man, he was an easygoing young man and he got along with people and he really just had a good heart. And so he would forgive his mom over and over and over whenever she just, let him have it for no reason because she was frustrated. She was having a hard time. I mean, let's think about it. Love life is hard. And whenever dad leaves and there's no money, mom's trying to raise her children. It really, it makes a difference in the dynamics of the family. And to be honest, one person, I don't want to say can't do it all because there's many people out there who do it all, but it's not meant to be that way. And it's a really frustrating and hard circumstance when you find yourself in that. So this young man had tons of frustration and, he put up with it and he put up with it. And then one day, he was just tired of putting up with it. He was so frustrated with his mom and he felt that he didn't deserve how she was treating him. Well, he had his grandparents, and they were pretty close family as far as that went. But one day, his he asked his grandmother, "Can I come live with you?" Because he was so frustrated, he didn't even want to live with his mom anymore. He loved his mom, but he just couldn't live with her anymore. And at first, he didn't get to do that. But eventually, he did get to do that. Well, like any grandparent, once you start to live with that grandparent, it's a little bit different than spending a few hours or spending the night with that grandparent. Grandma was a little tougher than maybe she was whenever, he was living with his mom. So she was a little tougher and she expected certain things from him. And yeah, she was probably straight to the point. She was a woman who was straight to the point. There again, he was kind of a soft hearted kid, and that was kind of hard to take. And he took it personal sometimes. Well, one day he became so frustrated with her, and she was being so hard on him. You know, he wanted to get away from her too. But then he heard her talking to somebody at the door, and it was Meals on Wheels. Remember, this is grandma, and she doesn't have a lot of money and a lot of income. So she's talking to somebody on Meals on Wheels, and she's trying to finagle, a little bit of extra food so she can feed him. And as they sit down to eat that meal, and he's looking at the plate that she just divided with him, giving him a larger portion than she had, he started to see her differently. It opened up his heart because whenever somebody is so hard on us, we start to think, they don't care about us. But she was being hard on him because she wanted him to be a better person. And so she was just straightforward with him. But that day they were dividing that meal, and he saw that she put 2/3 of that food on his plate and 1/3 on hers. And she said, "All right, let's eat." He really started to see her differently. He started to see her differently. And on that day, even though he had had so much trouble in his life, lots of frustrations, and even he had become friends with people that his grandmother did not approve of, and that's where all this frustration began, was she was not going to have him be friends with people who were going to take him down the road of drugs and alcohol and partying and that kind of thing and ruin his life. So on that day of Meals on Wheels, and they divided that plate up, he made a change. He had a heart change. He had a mind change. He saw his grandmother differently than he had before. And with that, he went back to school. And instead of sitting in the back of the room, messing around, just deciding that he was just going to make bad grades, like a lot of kids do who are frustrated, he decided he was going to make great grades. He was going to do well. And when he made that decision, everything in his life changed. So here he was in certain dire circumstances, not great circumstances, but he made a decision because all of a sudden his eyes were open and he saw his life differently than he had before. He saw his grandmother differently than he had before. And he made the decision, and he started doing great in school. And then he applied to college. He became a lawyer. He met a wonderful woman at school and found love and got married. And his life changed for the better. But what if that day when Meals on Wheels came to that door, he didn't hear them talking, and he didn't realize what his grandmother was sacrificing for him, and that she really only wanted the best for him? Well, this movie is called Hillbilly Elegy. And I have to tell you, the first time I watched it, I was like, I remember sitting there thinking, I'm gonna turn this off in a minute because I'm not one of those people who watches the shows where people are yelling at each other, like some of the housewife shows where it's like virtual, whatever. See, I can't even tell you the name of them. But I don't watch that kind of thing because I like to watch positive things that um feed good into my mind because, there's enough hard as it is. So, Hillbilly Elegy, I just about turned it off several times. And when I started to watch it again, because it had been a few years ago that I watched it, I started watching it again and I was thinking, I think I watched this. And then I would think, oh, I don't remember anything after this. So I'd keep watching, and as things would happen, I think, oh yeah, I remember this too. I remember this too. So I just kept on watching. But Hillbilly Elegy is at the top of the Netflix list. Why? Because he is a senator in Ohio, and his name is J.D. Vance. And it's just an awesome story of a relationship that, where with his grandmother and with his mom and with his family, and where one decision made a big change in his life. One decision. And so, when we're we're trying to get our kids to listen, or when we're trying to figure out how we can get along better with our spouse, because it's all about relationships. We have to keep trying. We have to keep moving forward. We have to keep having hope, because something around the corner may be right there for you, and it's the difference that you need. In the second movie that I watched, it is about the effects of neglect, and it's about a very successful show host who's very successful, and he has it all, except that he and his wife have just divorced. She's married someone else, and before this, he was married to his job. And this happens a lot where people are married to their job. I mean, I've even had it happen myself where I became so engrossed in working on the extraordinary marriage and figuring out all the aspects that I needed so that I could share with you, that I became too engrossed to where my husband never complained, but I became too engrossed. And I've been in the last while trying to find balance in that. But in this movie, it's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life. I think that's from 1946. It's a movie that often shows at Christmas, and it shows a man who well, he has some great challenges in his job. And what this movie's actually about, It's a Wonderful Life, is a man is shown what life would be like if he never lived. Sometimes we get so frustrated. We're like, I wish I never lived, or I wish I could die. But it shows what his family would be like if he never lived. And so this movie, with the talk show host, it's kind of like that. And basically, he realizes after this divorce that he's really sad, and he misses his wife, and he loves her very much. And just like It's a Wonderful Life, there's an angel that comes into the story, and this man is given a second chance. He is given a second chance, and the angel offers him an opportunity to pick out any time that he wants to go back during his marriage and maybe get a do-over. He gets 1 week. So he gets 1 week, and he chooses to go back 10 years, which is close to one of their anniversaries. So he goes back 10 years. And as he begins, he's very busy at work. It takes a lot of time and planning to record his show that he's doing. And he really starts to make the same mistakes over again. Because, without making a change or tweaking things, you're going to keep doing the same thing you've been doing, and you're going to keep getting the same thing you're getting. And that's what he found. But because he had, a mentor, a coach, a friend, an angel who reminded him of the problems that got him to the place that he was, divorced, he reminded him, you got to make some changes. You got to look at this. So as time went on, he started to make some changes, and I want to share with you what some of those were. First of all, he started to take charge of his work schedule, because he loved his work, and he had a producer that yelled and screamed. Yeah. And you just did what she wanted, or else she was yelling and screaming. But all of a sudden, at this point, his marriage was more important, and he realized it didn't matter what that producer did. If she yelled and screamed, that he had to figure it out. He couldn't let her have her thumb on him and ruin his life. He had a second chance. So he took charge of his work schedule, and he said, I'm not working on Sundays. She made him work 7 days a week. He said, I'm not working on Sundays. And he decided that he would attend the marriage counseling. So 10 years before this, he and his wife were in marriage counseling. Often people refuse to go to marriage counseling. And then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road, it's over. And they look back and they think, if only I would taken the time, if only I would have been willing to, go to counseling with my spouse. But he did get a second chance. So here he is. He decides he will go to marriage counseling. She's so surprised whenever he shows up. Another thing he did was He made sure that he could attend dinner and family events. No, if he told his kids he was going to be somewhere, he made sure that he was there. If he told his wife he was going to be home for dinner, he made sure he was there. His family started to enjoy one another again and to talk at dinner and spend that time together. And too often these days, people are so busy with so many things, they're not taking that time to sit down together at the table and have dinner. And if they do, if they allow phones at the table, then you know what happens. Not only are the kids looking at their phone, but I'm pretty bothered if my spouse picks up the phone and is looking at the phone because it beeps all the time. Yeah, I fix mine so it doesn't beep all the time. I don't like to be interrupted constantly. But sometimes his is beeping. I think he changed some of the settings on that so that, so he could do better on that. But when you're sitting around the table and there's a table full of people and everybody's looking at their phone, nobody's talking. You don't even know what's going on with each other. And the same goes for husbands and wives. If you don't stop and take some time together and have a conversation, then you really begin to suddenly just not know each other anymore. So he attends counseling and he's showing up for dinner and he's showing up for his kids' events and the things he's supposed to be there for his wife. He begins helping with the kids. Often this is an important thing. One spouse feels like they're doing it all, and it causes frustration. It causes you to kind of hold a grudge against your spouse, whenever they're not helping, especially if two spouses are working. So if two spouses are working, then definitely you got to help out with the kids, help out with the house, help out with all the different things that are around the house, decide who's doing what, right? But he began helping with his kids. And at this point, his kids really, they were resentful and they didn't really know him so good either. The thing with this is that his wife was so loving and so understanding, and they literally got along beautifully. It's just that they simply started to grow apart because he was never around. And whenever somebody's not there to talk, have conversations, share life together with, eventually you start to grow apart. So this wasn't even a story of people who fought and butted heads and couldn't stand being around each other. These were two people that actually loved each other. They enjoyed one another. Also, guess what? He started giving his wife compliments and they started having a little bit of time where they flirted and they had some fun together. You know, Often people think that after you've been married many, many years, there's no flirting anymore. I want you to stop and think about what brought you together. Think about those days when you were dating. What did you like about your spouse? What did you love about your spouse? What made you want to be with them all the time? It's that thing where you are both making each other feel important and loved and cared for. And when that starts to go away, no matter how many years you've been married or how many years you've been dating, it starts putting distance between you. And the truth is, you know, you're flirting whenever you're dating, or actually when you're trying to get that first date, you continue to flirt. Then you get married, there's still some flirting going on. And then you have children. Life gets busier and busier, and everything is about your kids. And you no longer have any energy to flirt with your spouse. But you know what? If you can have date night, spend some time together, have some fun together, you can hang in there because you love your children and it's just a season in life. And as we say sometimes, this too shall pass, although we don't really want it to pass. And we don't really want our kids to grow up, but they do. And then there's the next season where the kids are coming and going from the house, whether they're working or they're going to school or college. And, you start to have a little more time to flirt with your spouse. It's so important to have those special times together, to have conversation and to have fun together. I don't know about you, but I'm a fun loving person and I like to have fun. I like to laugh. and I like to be joyful. And so, there's been times where life is hard and you have to find those little moments of joy. Well, in the two movies that we've heard today, Hillbilly Elegy, and did I give you the name of the other one? A Marriage Made in Heaven. So think about that. I'm sitting on my couch. It's a rainy Saturday, and I start watching A Marriage Made in Heaven. It probably wasn't one of your A+ movies. It was probably a B+ or an A- movie, but it had such a compelling story. A marriage made in heaven. That's what we all want, isn't it? But see, their marriage was made in heaven until life interrupted, until his work schedule and the demands of the kids and everything in their life started to divide them. And if he wouldn't have had that second chance and been able to go back 10 years and do it over, he would have stayed an unhappy, divorced person. And I've run into a few people who have lost their relationships and they don't know why. Sometimes it is overwork and not taking enough time for each other. Sometimes it is literally bumping heads because your personalities are a little opposite and you don't know how to work with one another. Sometimes it is how we were raised and our past, and we're so very different. Our beliefs and our values are different, and it causes a lot of challenge. The thing is, there is help. You can get a mentor, you can get a coach, you can confide in a friend, get some help. Small choices and consistency reap huge benefits from small, insignificant actions. And this is what we call compound effects. Doing little things, making small changes, moving forward. Because again, I say, if you keep doing the same things you've been doing, you will keep getting the same things you've been getting. So, are you ready to make a change? Do you need to talk to somebody? You might have a great friend, you might have a relative, you might have a mentor that you talk to, or you might need a coach. And that's what I do. My name is Connie Durham, and I coach couples. I coach one-on-one. I coach small groups online or in person locally. So you can find me at theextraordinarymarriage.com, and you can look up Fresh Insights. Hit that button, put your information in there, and you can see if I have something open. And I can actually talk to you about whatever is challenging, and I can let you know if it's something I can help you with. All right. Connie Durham, The Extraordinary Marriage. And I hope this has been helpful for you today.